I stood in Paige's pristine white bathroom, the tissue box under my arm. But it wasn't tissues I was staring at. It was his watch. His engraved initials stared back at me. Paige walked in, her silk bridal robe swaying. For a flash, she froze, her eyes darting to the watch. And then, a painful, practiced smile. "Oh, he must have left that here," she said. Her smile didn't convince me. The gnawing nausea had already taken root, but I didn't confront her. I barely whispered congratulations before bolting out. My heart was in my throat. At the ceremony, Paige looked breathtaking, like the perfect bride. But I couldn't stop seeing shadows I didn't see before. His watch, her mask slipping for a second too long as vows were exchanged. My chest burned. Every "I promise" coming out of her mouth sounded like a mockery. I wanted to yell, I wanted to ruin it, but I just sat there. That night, I couldn't sleep. His scent on her lingered in my head, even if it was imaginary. Endless thoughts circled. How? Why? Since when? I needed answers. By morning, I made up my mind. I wouldn't explode. Not yet. I texted my fiancé to meet for lunch. An excuse about wedding planning details for a coworker's wedding. Seeing him sit across from me, so casual, like everything was normal, had my blood boiling. His stupid smile, his nonchalant voice, they betrayed just how much I never suspected. "Have you been to Paige's place lately?" I asked casually. His hesitation before saying no was everything. An imperceptible flicker in his confident mask. I knew. I guess they didn't think they'd get caught. The way his gaze softened like he thought he was safe made me sick. I excused myself, pretending I got a call. I didn't leave though. I stood outside, phone to my ear, pretending to pace. I needed to know if he'd call her, if panic would make them unravel. Nothing. No calls, no texts, just him paying the bill and leaving. It felt like facing a wall made of lies. I had to confront this differently. When I invited Paige over 2 days later, her voice was light, as if nothing could ever go wrong. "I haven't seen you since the wedding," she sang. I let her in with a forced smile. She didn't notice how heavy my stare felt, or how I avoided hugging her. She started chatting about her honeymoon. "How's married life?" slipped out. She grinned too wide, saying, "Perfect, couldn't be happier." My stomach twisted, but I matched her enthusiasm. "Did my fiancé forget something at your place months ago?" I asked suddenly. She stopped mid-sentence, her throat working as she fumbled for words. "What do you mean?" she finally asked. I tilted my head, studying her like a book I was finally learning to read. "You know exactly what I mean," I said. She stammered for excuses, but I'd already laid the trap. Out came the watch from my pocket. Her face paled, mouth opening like a fish gasping. No words. Tears sprang to her eyes. "It's not what it looks like," she pleaded, desperation clawing through every syllable. But desperation doesn't erase guilt. Her excuses twisted around half-truths. Late nights, mistakes, how she never wanted to hurt anyone. All I saw was betrayal crawling out with every syllable. The storm inside me snapped. "How long, Paige?" I demanded loudly for the first time. Her sob ripped into my ears like nails. "Before you got engaged," she admitted. Those words hit like a train. Before the engagement, she'd been sneaking around while I planned my future. It wasn't simply neglect. It was malice. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was laugh bitterly. "Burn my life down for him? For some perfect groom who cheats? He's yours." She begged me to stay and talk, but I grabbed the door handle and said, "Congratulations on the happiest chapter of your life." Silence boomed behind me as I left. I didn't go back to my fiancé, not directly. Instead, I mailed the watch with 2 photos, her wedding picture and a copy of our engagement photo. No note. He called me frantically days later. I didn't pick up. My heart raced when his name lit up my phone screen, but I wouldn't let him explain this away. I moved out before he could find me. Left the engagement ring on the counter, keys next to it. No note. I owed neither of them closure. Months later, I learned she left him too. Couldn't handle the guilt eating at her. Good. They deserved every ounce of the wreckage they created. It still burned sometimes, like a phantom limb, but I felt lighter, without the burden of their deception. Healing doesn't come fast, but it does come. Eventually, I stopped looking down at my hand for the engagement ring. There was no need anymore. I'd only ever needed my own strength to move on. The violin playing "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the room as Paige started walking down the aisle. She wore Mom's veil, and everyone whispered how stunning she looked. Alex sat beside me, smiling way too much, trying too hard. His hand grabbed mine like he thought I'd run. I barely looked at him, my heart pounding. His "Are you okay?" barely made it past my clenched jaw. His cologne was suffocating. I stared at the altar, ignoring him, gripping the bouquet tighter. Paige passed me, that plastered grin stuck on her face. She couldn't even meet my eyes. My stomach churned watching her approach the officiant. The officiant's words buzzed in my ears like white noise. The room felt smaller with every sentence closing in, the lies suffocating thicker than Alex's cologne. I clutched the bouquet so hard, petals started bending. Paige's betrayal, sure, fine. But Alex's, that was what burned. A promise of forever reduced to ashes. The vows started, and Paige's voice trembled, almost breaking. Everyone thought it was nerves, but I knew her better. Guilt dripped from her every word. Alex whispered Paige's name under his breath. He thought I didn't notice. My hand twitched in his, itching to yank it away, but I held back. The officiant raised his hands for the rings, and Paige hesitated. It was subtle, barely a pause, but I caught it. The lies were cracking. When they kissed, the room erupted in applause. I just stared, the sound swirling around me while anger bubbled hot under my skin. Alex leaned toward me again, mumbling something about the happy couple. His voice grated. I finally yanked my hand away, and his face dropped. Reception chatter filled the air. Paige avoided me perfectly. But Alex? He lingered near the drinks table, looking haunted, stealing glances toward me. I passed Alex to grab water. He muttered, "About earlier," but I cut him off with the coldest look I could manage. He didn't try again. People fawned over Paige's dress. She hugged guests and posed for photos. Every smile screamed fake to me now. Photos meant for proof, not joy. I overheard Paige laughing off Alex's "help with arrangements." She sounded like a bragging schoolgirl, oblivious to how it made my blood boil. Hours in, Paige finally found me. "Hey," she began cautiously, but I just stared, waiting for her true colors. Her nervous attempt was insulting. She asked, "Are you okay?" I laughed, sharp, hollow. Her face dropped, and for the first time, she looked guilty. Guilt made her ugly. "This is your fault," I hissed. Paige's fake smile shattered. Her eyes darted away as she struggled to regain control. That coward couldn't reply. Alex appeared out of nowhere, calling my name. He tried to touch my arm, but I jerked back. His widening eyes said everything. I walked away from them both. My heels echoed on the pavement outside the venue as I gasped for air. Finally, I chose freedom. Back inside, Paige was crying in a hallway, her mascara smeared as she sobbed into her hands. She didn't deserve my pity, still didn't. Alex cornered me near the parking lot. "Let me explain," he begged. His voice cracked, but his desperation didn't move me. Not anymore. "You're worse than her." My words made him flinch. His face crumbled, like I'd just stabbed him. But no guilt could change the truth. The lies unraveled quicker now. Bits of their affair clicked into place in my head. The watch, the calls, the late nights, pieces I didn't want. The watch was proof, the one she'd gifted him last week. An unmistakable engraving, forever, bold and mocking. I should have smashed it when I saw it. Paige found Alex alone later. Their whispered argument carried just enough for me to catch phrases. "Fix this. She'll ruin everything." Their panic was delicious. I stepped right into their desperate huddle. Their guilty expression said everything without words. "Don't worry," I said coldly. "You'll get what you deserve." Guests dispersed as the night calmed. Alex avoided my eyes completely now, nursing his drink like it held ants as Paige stayed plastered to her husband. I left quietly, heels crunching on gravel. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, exactly, but the weight on my chest lifted. Let them rot in lies. Driving away, I didn't look back at the venue. Finally, I was free, even if part of me still wanted revenge. The fight was over, though. I sat there fuming under the glimmering wedding lights. Paige seemed perfect, but everything felt fake. especially her forced thank yous. My stomach churned with rage and betrayal. The maid of honor cried about Paige and her husband being soulmates. I rolled my eyes. It was syrupy and insincere. Another reminder of how false this all felt. I couldn't stand the sham any longer. It might have been the champagne, or the suffocating betrayal weighing down on me like a corset. Suddenly, I found myself standing when the microphone was handed over. Alex beside me tried to stop me, panic in his eyes. Paige's face turned pale as I started my speech. Her frozen smile showed she wasn't prepared for what was coming next. I praised her sarcastically, mentioning her dedication and loyalty, with just enough edge that people chuckled, thinking I was joking. The room felt electric as I let the crowd assume humor in my words. But I was dead serious. Paige's uncertainty was satisfying to watch. But sometimes loyalty goes too far, I continued, locking eyes with Paige. Her smile started to falter then. I dropped the bomb, like borrowing things that don't belong to you. Paige's shock was perfect. Her mask slipped for a moment. Alex was pale, and I felt energized, adrenaline holding me up as my legs threatened to wobble. Paige gaped as I revealed, for example, borrowing my fiancé. Gasps erupted around the room, finally breaking the fake cheer. Silence stretched across the room, a mix of shock and whispers. I felt both liberated and terrified, standing there exposed. Turning away from the microphone, I felt a mix of triumph and fear surging through me. The weight of the confrontation was settling in. Paige's mother rushed to her side, looking bewildered, trying to control the fallout. I watched, detached and slightly satisfied. Alex stayed seated, unable to meet my eyes. His betrayal hurt the most, yet his silence confirmed everything. Guests started whispering, their faces filled with morbid curiosity. Some took hurried sips of champagne to mask their discomfort. I walked past the stunned guests, each step feeling heavier. Whispers followed me, but I kept my head high. Outside, the cool air hit my face, a refreshing reminder of reality. I felt lighter, though unsure of what came next. I sat on a nearby bench, the distant hum of the city filling the silence left by my outburst. My mind raced, but I didn't regret it. Alex appeared at the door, but hesitated, knowing there wasn't much left to say. His face was etched with regret. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he said, his voice brittle. I sighed, feeling a mix of relief and pain. I looked at him, finally finding words. "You two deserve each other." My voice was steady, almost devoid of bitterness. The moon rose higher, and I knew it was time to leave. Walking away felt like shedding an old skin. I called for a cab, feeling the unfamiliar freedom in the air. I was ready to reclaim my life, step by step. As the cab pulled up, the noise of the city offered comfort, much more real than the applause at weddings. The cab ride felt surreal, a mix of past and future colliding. I gazed out the window, contemplating what lay ahead. I took a deep breath, imagining the possibilities. The loss stung, but the prospect of freedom was exhilarating. Arriving at my destination, I felt the weight of the evening finally lift. The next chapter awaited, and I was ready. I looked back for a moment, acknowledging the past without dwelling. It was time to move forward. I walked towards the unknown, each step firm and assured. The world was mine to reclaim. Starting now, the room was silent, except for the soft clink of silverware. Everyone's eyes seemed frozen, unsure whether this was about to turn ugly. Travis looked utterly lost, his face pale, his lips slightly parted like someone who just woke up from a nightmare. An awkward tension hung in the air as all eyes turned towards Paige, sharp and cutting like broken glass in a silent room. Her voice cracked under the weight of the accusation. "It's not true," Paige said, her words trembling as if she'd been struck. Alex sat rigid, jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. The guilt was written all over his face. I let myself lean back just slightly, a smirk tugging on my lips. "You don't know?" I asked. "Funny, you left his watch in your bathroom." Murmurs spread like wildfire. People exchanged looks of disbelief. Others stared openly at Paige, whose composure was unraveling fast. Paige's maid of honor rushed to her side, whispering in desperation, her hands fluttering like useless wings. Paige's eyes darted towards Alex. Her mouth opened but closed again quickly, like she couldn't find words that would save her. Alex finally spoke, sounding defeated and raw. "Lily, please!" It was almost pathetic how little fight was left in him. But I wasn't done. "Don't," I snapped, my voice cutting through his attempt at placation. "Just don't." The murmuring turned into loud whispers and gasps. Paige's face was crumbling under the weight of collective judgment. Travis rose slowly, his palms firmly on the table. His gaze flickered between Alex and Paige, like choosing whom to confront first. "I think we need to talk," Travis said, his voice calm in a way that only sharpened its edge. Paige took a step back instinctively, her chair scraping loudly against the tiled floor. Her face looked almost childlike with panic. Alex stood abruptly, his chair toppling to the floor. "It's not what you think," he shouted, his voice cracking. Travis took a long breath, his jaw clenching once before he hissed through his teeth, "Then explain it, please." The room fell silent again, but it was a deafening kind of quiet, warped by the intensity in every face's gaze. Paige tried to spin some story, her words stumbling over themselves, but nobody bought it. The damage was done. Travis finally said, "You know what? I don't need this. I don't need you." The calm authority in his voice was chilling. Paige stumbled over her words, reaching out instinctively for Travis's arm, but he pulled away without hesitation. Alex muttered, "This got out of hand real fast," his voice barely audible as his head dropped in humiliation. The maid of honor started ushering Paige away, whispering something I couldn't hear, as her heels clicked against the tile floor. I sat still, watching the wreckage I'd caused. There was something satisfying about truths coming to light, no matter how messy. Travis left through the back door, his footsteps heavy and full of grim finality. Nobody tried stopping him. Alex whispered, "Lily, why now? Why here?" His face was pleading, but I looked away. It wasn't about him. As the guests filed out, the room felt empty and drained, like it had held an emotional hurricane minutes before. Paige couldn't meet anyone's eyes as she left. She kept her head low, her shoulders slumped beneath her bright green sleeves. Alex lingered, his hands stuffed in his pockets, wondering if he should say something or just leave like the others. When the room was finally empty, I sat alone, staring at the mess of plates and glasses. It was almost poetic, really. I stood in the wedding hall, gripping my champagne glass with white knuckles. My heart pounded, but I couldn't let this pass unnoticed anymore. Paige looked radiant in her white gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids. But the circle they formed wasn't celebratory. It felt protective and ominous. Travis stood at the front, his once confident demeanor shattered. He gripped his champagne glass so hard I thought it'd shatter, his face pale. Alex was by my side but avoided eye contact. He tried whispering something, his voice shaking, like he was scrambling for damage control. I cut through the silence, my voice sharp and unrelenting. I asked Paige about Alex's late nights and her perfume. The air grew heavier with every word. Paige's facade cracked. Her bridesmaids fidgeted nervously, whispering behind her. Finally, she broke free from them, her face contorting with rage. "So what?" Paige yelled, her voice shrill enough to turn heads. Her words pierced through the room as Travis turned to look at her in disbelief. Her shriek carried truths too sharp to ignore. My anger surged, more unstoppable now, louder than my pounding heart, louder than my shame. Paige looked straight at me, defiant. "You never loved him, you just liked the idea of him," she spat. Each word felt like a slap. Travis flinched violently at her, words, looking at her like she was a stranger. His jaw tightened, and his grip on the glass loosened slightly. The weight of her words hit me, but I held my ground. My legs wanted to buckle, but I stood tall for everyone to see her for who she truly was. Around us, murmurs turned into whispers, and whispers to gasps. The secrets I'd been forced to carry felt heavier, but releasing them was liberating. Alex tried pulling me aside, his hand brushing my arm. "This isn't the time," he said desperately, his eyes pleading, searching for escape. But it was already crumbling. "It's over," I said, loud enough to let everyone hear. Alex froze, his lips parted slightly in horror. Paige finally lost it. Ignoring her bridesmaids, she shouted, "He was mine first anyway!" Her mask shattered completely, leaving nothing but raw jealousy. Her confession froze the room. Travis dropped his glass, the shatter breaking the deafening silence. Eyes darted between them like players in a sudden tragedy. Suddenly, Paige bolted from the hall, her gown trailing angrily behind her. The bridesmaids hesitated before rushing after her toward the exit. "I didn't know," Travis stammered, looking right at Alex like some answer would come. But Alex just lowered his head, unresponsive. I walked away slowly, leaving the wreckage behind me. My heart raced, but I refused to let my legs falter. The whispers didn't matter anymore. Outside, I leaned against a stone pillar. Night air chilled me, but it couldn't numb the anger and exhaustion crawling over my skin. Travis followed minutes later, looking wrecked. "I should have seen the signs," he muttered, voice cracking, eyes glossy with pain, as he avoided looking directly at me. I told Travis everything, the late nights, the lies Alex spun. His face fell further with each word, like layers of trust were being stripped away. "You deserve better than this," I told him, barely above a whisper. He finally met my eyes, his pain visible but mixed with gratitude. Paige stormed past us, her bridesmaids trailing behind with tight-lipped awkwardness. She didn't say a word, just climbed into a car and slammed the door. I noticed Alex still hovering near the entrance, his hands shoved into his pockets. He wasn't looking at anyone, just staring at the asphalt. "Can you leave?" I said sharply. I didn't want his presence ruining the clarity of this moment of reckoning. He looked at me, startled. Alex didn't argue. He turned and left, his silhouette fading into the parking lot shadows. Relief washed over me, if only faintly. Travis sighed, running a hand over his face. "You didn't deserve this either," he murmured. I wasn't sure if he was talking about me or himself. I looked up at the stars, letting the cool air fill my lungs. The anger had burned itself out, leaving just residual ache behind. Walking away together, Travis and I didn't say much more. The silence felt heavy but healing, like a shared acknowledgement of what we'd lost. I stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink. My reflection showed smeared makeup and flushed cheeks. Paige's furious words echoed in my mind, making me question everything. The ache in my chest grew unbearable as I played her words over. "You just like the idea of him." Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't even know myself anymore. A knock on the door startled me, followed by Alex's voice, cautious and pleading. "Lily, please, talk to me." My stomach churned in anger and betrayal. How dare he come here and try to comfort me? He wasn't my ally. He was the man who betrayed me. My voice cracked as I told him to go away. I swung the door open so Alex could see the fury on my face. "Did you love her, Alex, or was it just convenient?" My voice was biting, relentless. He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. I could see the guilt. "It wasn't," he started, but I wasn't going to let him talk his way around this. "Answer the damn question," I snapped. My anger boiled over, setting my body rigid, my voice sharp. He stared at me, helpless, like he didn't know what to say. He finally broke the silence. "I don't know," he muttered, like his confusion could excuse the betrayal that shredded my heart. It felt like he'd plunged a knife into me. I slammed the door in his face, tears spilling uncontrolled as my legs wobbled. The weight of his pathetic answer crushed me completely. My knees gave out, and I crumpled to the tile floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The cold bathroom echoed my broken state, and I felt like I was disappearing. I felt trapped, surrounded by the suffocating silence of the bathroom. Every breath felt heavier. As I tried to process what he'd just admitted, suddenly I grabbed my phone, desperate for some sort of anchor. My fingers trembled as I scrolled mindlessly, avoiding the flood of unanswered questions. A message popped up from Paige. "You deserve better than both of us." Her words stung in a new way, as if they tied me deeper in knots. Her text brought memories rushing back, moments of friendship. How had we ended up here, at war over him? We were supposed to have each other's backs. My resolve hardened as I realized I couldn't stay wrapped in this mess. It was wrecking me. They weren't worth it. Not Alex, not Paige. I splashed cold water on my face, washing away the messy streaks of makeup and the raw evidence of humiliation. It felt like shedding skin. I stared at my reflection again, taking in the stripped, vulnerable version of myself. I wasn't pretty at that moment, but at least I felt real. I stepped out of the bathroom into the dim hallway. Alex was gone. Good. I didn't have the energy to confront him again tonight. The living room felt quiet, too quiet. I sat on the couch, still trembling, trying to piece myself together. My chest felt hollow, but I needed to keep going. I deleted Alex's number from my phone, hands trembling. It felt ceremonial, cutting off a part of my life I didn't want back. A knock at the door startled me. My heart raced as I hesitated, unsure if I could face another confrontation tonight. It was Paige. She looked like she'd been through hell too, her mascara smeared, but her expression apologetic. "Can I come in?" she whispered. After a long pause, I stepped aside, letting her in. We were both quiet, carrying the weight of what had happened but too tired to fight. She started crying, apologizing for everything, Alex, the fight, all of it. Her voice cracked as she said, "I shouldn't have said those things to you." I didn't forgive her, not fully, but I told her I understood. We were both casualties of the same war, and it wasn't all her fault. For the first time, we talked honestly about Alex, about the lies, manipulation, and how we'd both trusted him too much. It felt cathartic. She left eventually, and I found myself alone again, exhausted but calmer. The house felt quieter than ever, almost peaceful. I made tea, needing something simple to ground myself. Watching the steam curl up made me realize how much I needed to start over. I curled up in bed, still heavy with everything that had happened. I wasn't okay, but maybe that was okay for now. Tomorrow would be different. As I drifted into sleep, I felt the first sliver of hope. Not for fixing the past, but at least for reclaiming myself. Hours later, I sat outside in the dark, my dress no guard against the cold. The music and laughter still spilled out, like we weren't all living inside a disaster. Inside, Paige and Travis danced under the lights, stiff and awkward. Their forced smiles couldn't fool anyone, while whispers spread around champagne glasses like wildfire. I escaped the suffocating room, my heels clicking against concrete before finding the old bench. It felt like running, not walking, even though my legs were heavy. As I sat on the bench staring at nothing, Paige came out, barefoot, her veil hung askew from her messy bun. She looked half a ghost of the bride she started as. Without looking at her, I muttered, "What do you want?" She sat next to me, her silence louder than the music still trailing outside from the room. Finally, she broke the tension. "You were always the strong one, Lily," she said softly. It didn't feel like praise, more like admitting defeat. I scoffed, not turning toward her. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" My voice carried the weight of resentment that had been building for years. Her voice cracked as she lied. "I didn't mean to hurt you." For a second, I felt her vulnerability. But it wasn't enough to thaw the hurt. I turned to her, finally, and asked, "Then why did you do it? Why steal him when you knew?" My voice broke before I could finish. Paige exhaled, her confession hitting me like a punch. "Because he picked you first." I didn't say anything. It was like the ground shook and silence swallowed me whole. Before I could respond, she got up and walked away, leaving me alone in the chilling quiet. Her soft steps disappeared into the music as if she'd never been there. I stared at the ground, trying to piece together everything she'd just said. My hand clenched the edge of the bench, fighting the overwhelming mix of anger and heartbreak. It felt almost surreal, like her words weren't real. From the loud party inside to the silence out here, I was suspended alone in my own disbelief. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, listening to the muffled laughter and conversation. Like they hadn't just been part of the fractured fairy tale. My thoughts ran wild. She did this because of me? Because of him? How could a confession turn something messy into unbearable chaos in my mind? I wanted to scream, but my voice felt trapped. Too many broken pieces to ever form words. All I did was clench my fists tighter and tighten my jaw. I finally looked toward the entrance, wondering how many knew the truth Paige had just spilled. Did they all see through the charade, or were they blind? Part of me wanted to go back in there and confront them all, but I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough yet. Not for this, not tonight. The bench creaked as I shifted. Even the smallest sound felt enormous out here in the stillness. It was too quiet now, too sharp. I traced patterns on the bench's worn wood with my finger, as if distracting myself would make this less painful. It didn't, not even a little. A faint breeze rustled my hair, and I realized I wasn't breathing right. I took in shaky gulps of the cold air, trying to remind myself I was still here. I thought back to Travis. Did he know she'd always been jealous? Did he even care? Part of me was disgusted with him, but I couldn't untangle it all yet. For so long, I thought she was family, someone safe. Now, I was rewriting every memory I had of her to include this mess. And it hurt worse the longer I thought. Any trust we'd built was crumbling. Every smile, every laugh felt fake now. It wasn't just about Travis. It was about everything Paige had ever stolen in silence. I heard voices approaching and froze. I didn't want company, couldn't handle more lies tonight. The shadows lengthened as two figures emerged through the hall's doorway. It was a couple of guests, not Paige or Travis. I sighed in relief but stayed quiet, hoping they wouldn't notice me sitting here in the dark. They passed by chatting, not paying me any attention. I felt smaller watching them, tucked into my little corner like a mistake left behind to rot. I glanced at the sky and focused on the stars. It was easier than thinking about her words or my next move. Maybe stargazing was my way of escaping. Paige wasn't coming back out, I was sure of it. She'd said everything she wanted, and what she left behind was for me to shoulder alone. Eventually, I got up, my legs stiff and trembling. I left the bench behind, knowing this wasn't the end of Paige, and me, not yet, anyway. After the wedding fiasco, I ignored the chaos of calls, texts, and gossip. Mom wanted to fix it, but fixing betrayal after years? That's not done in one chat. I avoided everyone except Alex. Against better judgment, I let him come over. The moment he walked through the door, I set the rules. This doesn't mean forgiveness. Alex didn't argue when I made it clear. He sank onto the couch like someone carrying the weight of regret. His eyes looked swollen, like he'd been crying for days. I sat opposite him, clutching an empty coffee mug, my shield against the silence. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. Was it real? What you had with her? He hesitated. Then his guilty eyes met mine and said more than his answer. It wasn't love. Relief hit me, despite knowing I shouldn't feel it. It hurt to feel hope. His voice broke, but it felt easy. With you, it's complicated. I hated him. I hated myself for loving him. My chest was tight with rage and shame all together. I set the mug down too hard and leaned forward. Get out! My voice didn't tremble. He froze but didn't protest, guilt keeping him mute as he slowly stood up. The latch clicked as the door shut behind him, leaving only silence. I didn't cry. No sobs, no breakdown. I just sat there, staring at the floor, still gripping the mug. The next day, Mom called again. Her voice was soft, probing. Are you okay? I wanted to say no, to yell at her for old wounds, but instead, I hung up. I avoided everyone for days. Each text or voicemail burned into my brain as a reminder of what was broken. But I didn't delete them. Not yet. Alex left my life temporarily. Good. But his words haunted me. Was complicated code for toxic, or just for real? Did he even know the difference? Mom finally stopped texting. But then came the emails. Sometimes letting go is the only way, she wrote. Letting go isn't as easy as pressing send, though. It wasn't just Alex who betrayed me. It was the image we'd built together. His affair cracked the foundation of everything that felt permanent. And now nothing felt solid. A week passed, and Alex texted, I'm sorry, 2 words. It should have meant something. I should have been relieved seeing remorse. Instead, I couldn't reply. I reread his text until I hated myself for caring. Each time, it felt worse seeing his regret. I wanted more truth, more clarity, something real. Mom's voice haunted me every time I ignored her calls. She wasn't just wrong, she was part of it. The cracks in my relationship started years ago, years she was blind to. I finally picked up her call after 2 weeks. Letting go isn't healing, I said, my tone sharp enough to crack walls. She didn't know what to say. Mom apologized carefully, but apologies weren't enough now. Her words felt rehearsed, polite, something detached. Maybe she didn't even understand what her role had been. Days felt heavy, like carrying bricks. I couldn't tell anyone what I needed, not friends, not family. Isolation seemed the only way I could breathe again. Eventually, I texted Alex back. Complicated doesn't mean good, it means broken. I wanted truth. But more than that, I wanted him to hurt like I did. Alex's reply came within the hour. I can't handle losing you. My stomach twisted reading it. Too late, though. He'd lost me long before sharing his bed with her. I deleted Alex's messages, finally, and stared at the empty inbox. Relief didn't come, but the absence felt cleaner somehow. Less tangled, less raw. Mom wanted answers about why I hadn't attended family dinner last Sunday. Ask Alex, I snapped without thinking. Her gasp on the other end hurt more than I expected. Mom didn't call back after that. I couldn't decide if I felt abandoned or relieved. Maybe both. A weird silence settled without her voice in my ear. Closure wasn't coming fast, but some days felt less raw. Not healed, but tolerable. I stopped checking my phone every second for his name. Alex sent one last email, long, full of regret and self-loathing. I skimmed it, forcing myself not to pause too long on his confessions. He needed an audience. I wouldn't be it. Deleting his email stung more than I thought. Part of me wanted to hear him beg, needed him to, but I couldn't fix what he thought love was. I packed Alex's remaining things into a box and left it outside my apartment. Watching it sit there like some monument of failure reminded me of all I'd lost. The box was gone when I woke up. A small mercy, I guess. It felt cleaner starting the day without looking at proof he'd been here. Months later, Alex became a distant thread of memory, a lesson in what I wouldn't tolerate. Complicated isn't love. It's the absence of it. Days after the wedding fallout, I ignored Paige's weak text asking, "Can we talk?" The words felt hollow, like salt in an open wound. I saw Alex's car outside my apartment one evening. He never came in, just sat there, headlights dimmed, waiting for something I wouldn't give. I shut the blinds without looking back at him. Let him sit out there. I didn't owe him anything, not after what he'd done. Everyone treated me like a cautionary tale. Friends called to check in, but their curiosity disguised itself poorly. I hung up before spilling any of my pain. Mom blamed me for the wrecked wedding during one of her calls. "You could have handled it privately," she said, her voice sharp like broken glass. I shot back at Mom. "It doesn't change what they did." My voice cracked mid-sentence, but I didn't care. Truth shouldn't need politeness. For years, I played peacekeeper in our volatile family. It had always been my role to smooth out conflicts, no matter how hurt I felt. Now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't interested in keeping the peace. I let the anger rise instead of pushing it away. That storm inside me hadn't passed. It was fury, heartbreak, and self-preservation rolled into one, simmering quietly beneath my surface. And maybe for the first time, it was okay to feel this way. To let the storm brew, to stop running, stop pleasing everyone. One night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the wedding chaos in my head. Paige's stunned face cutting through the laughter felt like a haunting movie scene. Alex's betrayal stung worse every time I replayed it. He promised me everything, only to take it all away right when I trusted him. Sometimes, I thought about Paige's weak text again. Can we talk? What did she even want to say? I wasn't ready for her excuses. Outside, life went on without pause. People walked their dogs. Cars honked impatiently. My life felt like the only one stuck in slow motion. A friend invited me to brunch, claiming it'd cheer me up. But sitting at that crowded cafe, I felt like a disconnected time traveler. They brought up Alex, obviously. "You must feel so betrayed." I nodded, but my emotions didn't match theirs. My fury was a storm they couldn't grasp. I left early, excusing myself. The pity-filled eyes of others grated harder than anything Alex or Paige had done. That night, lying in my apartment, I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. The thought terrified me more than the betrayal. I finally threw out the keepsakes from the wedding. Photos, venue cards, everything. It felt like revenge, even if the grief stayed behind. Alex's car wasn't parked outside anymore. That small win gave me some peace, knowing he'd finally quit lingering. But then Paige showed up unannounced, knocking hesitantly. Her face through the peephole made my pulse quicken. I wasn't ready. I opened the door slowly. She stammered. I wanted to explain. The air thickened with tension as she stood fidgeting. Her excuses came tumbling out, but none held weight. "I didn't think you'd find out," she said, and I felt my fists clench. I told her to stop. Whatever she was trying to accomplish, I didn't want it. "You can go now," I said, closing the door in her face. Paige stood out there for a while, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. The weight lifting off me felt overdue. I texted Mom afterward. "You were right about the wedding mess, but I don't regret it." Her reply came quick. "You had the right to speak." For the first time, I felt a sliver of peace. The anger hadn't faded, but it wasn't running my life. It felt manageable. No more texts came from Paige or Alex after that. I realized their absence was its own apology. Silence felt better than meaningless words. Walking through the park one afternoon, I saw kids laughing, unbothered by the world's weight. For once, I envied their purity. I understood then. Healing doesn't mean quieting the storm. It means learning to live within it. Clouds don't scare me anymore. I sat cross-legged on the floor, holding Alex's engagement ring in. My palm, it felt heavy, like a memory soaked in regret. After tucking the ring into an old shoebox, I shoved it into the darkest part of my cluttered closet and shut the door. I called my landlord that evening, my hand trembling, as I told him I'd be leaving in 2 months. The words felt final. Paige didn't reach out after the fallout, and I didn't text her either. Some friendships aren't worth saving, I guess. Alex stopped texting altogether. His messages went from guilt-ridden apologies to silence, like he'd vanished from my life. I stared at Alex's final message one night during dinner. "If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Without thinking, I deleted his text. It wasn't closure. It was just something I did because I needed the space. Revenge wasn't the relief I expected, even after exposing their betrayal to everyone. It felt hollow once the adrenaline faded. I realized peace didn't come from payback. It came from stepping away, from letting go and not carrying their mess anymore. Something shifted inside me when I accepted that not every wound heals. Some just scar over and stay with you. Packing up my life felt symbolic, like I was peeling away layers of who I used to be and didn't want anymore. I donated old clothes and furniture, carrying each piece out of my apartment with the feeling of shedding a history. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. The physical act of leaving seemed to free me from the weight of memories. I wasn't running away, I told myself. It was starting over, somewhere Alex and Paige had never existed. On my last night in the apartment, I curled up on the floor, staring at the blank walls where pictures used to hang. The silence was almost sacred, like the room itself knew I was leaving it all behind and wished me well. Driving away the next morning, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I wasn't interested in goodbyes anymore. The new city smelled different, cleaner, fresher, like possibility itself, even though it scared me. I hid my hesitation under smiles and polite nods as I signed the lease for my new apartment. My neighbors seemed nice, though I was hesitant to get too close. Small, polite waves felt safer for now. Unpacking didn't feel as daunting as packing had. Every box opened felt like unraveling pieces of a lighter future. I hung plants by the windows and leaned artwork against the walls. Little touches finally made the space feel mine. One night, sitting alone on my new balcony, I realized I was no longer waiting for closure. I was learning to live without it. Letting go wasn't something I chose. It happened slowly, over moments I didn't even notice at first. I thought about Alex and Paige sometimes, but the thoughts came less, like old echoes that couldn't hurt me. For the first time, I imagined myself not as someone wronged, but someone who simply survived and chose herself. I took my first walk through the city without a map, letting myself get wonderfully, beautifully lost in it. In the chaos of unfamiliar streets, I found peace. It wasn't a resolution, just stillness inside myself. I realized closure wasn't something someone gives you. It's just the quiet after the storm you stop wishing had never happened. I didn't feel whole yet, but I finally felt ready to start building something new for myself. And that was enough.